Well, first of all, I want to welcome everybody. We'll give a moment to, and if you have the chance, if you're able to, it'd be great to see your face to show the screen, see some
human.
Some humans, yeah. New faces, familiar faces. I'm just going to get things started because we got a lot to go over. But I'll start with this is being recorded. So just to let you know, everyone that's here is likely a member of the Rock Rehab Community of physiotherapists and medical providers, the Climbing Special Interest Group of physiotherapy students, or you heard of this somehow through, maybe Instagram or some social media or something like that. So welcome everybody. This is the fourth year we're doing this. I learned something or tons of things every time we do it. But the topic for this panel is climbing gym physios or physiotherapists or doctors of physiotherapy. And we're going to get after it. We got over 70 questions that were submitted. We're not going to answer them all, but we kind of sorted through them, chunked them into groups, and have those kind of set up to go over. There may be some sensitive topics discussed, such as finances or models for people who are interested in, setting up their practices in the gym. Anytime there's something that's sensitive that's asked or discussed, obviously I'm going to be pausing the recording so that can just be discussed in confidence, almost like we were in a room of people, talking back and forth. So that's kind of the format with everything. I'm going to save a little bit of time. We're going to run 45 minutes to up to an hour. And I'm going to save a little bit of time at the end for those of you that are interested to do a little bit of meet and greet, where we'll do just some quick Zoom rooms, put you in groups of 3. Hey, how's it going? Who are you? And kind of get in touch and meet some people maybe that you may or may not know. So that is the format. And we have some people trickling in and out or trickling in as we go. I think without further ado, let's just get this kicked off. So first of all, I'm Jared Vagey. I run the webpage, climbingdoctor.com. As I mentioned, this is the 4th year we're doing this, and we have an awesome panel. And I'll just have each panelist just kind of intro themselves and what they're doing, their involvement in climbing. And feel free, we do have a lot of questions that were pre-submitted, but it's always engaging if you just drop stuff in the chat. Comments, questions, thoughts. Like, this is as interactive as we can be. And also you have access to anyone in the chat. If there's someone you are interested in saying hey to, or someone that you just want to drop a line to, you can private chat them as well. So use this as that option and possibility. Fill up the chat, connect with each other. I'll start with Kevin Cowell. Kevin, do you want to just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your practice?
Yeah, hey everyone. My name's Kevin Cowell. I've been a physical therapist for about 6.5 years now, and then I started the Climb Clinic just about 2 years ago. So just kind of right when the pandemic started, when I decided, yep, this is the thing for me. I'm gonna start entering climbing gyms and being a PT there. But I'm located in Broomfield, Colorado, so kind of just right in between Denver and Boulder area. And for the last 2 years, just kind of between the pandemic and some other things that are going on, it's there's obviously a lot of turbulence, but it's awesome that I've been able to have a full-time position owning and operating a clinic within the climbing facility. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. And Julien, do you want to describe a bit about you and your practice?
Yeah, so my name is Julien. I'm a physical therapist in the French part of Canada, so in Montreal, Quebec. I've been a physical therapist for 6 years, and I've been treating exclusively rock climbing patients for 6 years. So that's kind of funny. So I don't treat non-climbers. I started in a gym that's called Horizon Rock. So I was really, this little place in the gym, and I started tweaking. It just went by, how do you say in English, word of mouth. And since then, I've moved to the Bloc shop, which is the most amazing boulder gym in the East Coast. And I've been working full time, like between 5 and 6 days a week, every week. Even with the pandemic, I switched completely online because I had a discussion with a guy named Jared. He says, you know, online is amazing. You should try it. And I actually did that full time for 3 months. And I still do 1 day a week of a full-time remote rehab, and I love it.
Nice. And James.
Hi, my name is James Lee. I'm a physical therapist. I've been a PT for 12 years, graduated 2010, and started my practice about 6 years ago. Initially, I was doing home visits as like my niche market, but slowly it evolved to seeing more patients with climbing-related injuries. And I got a contract with First Ascent Gym in Chicago, and they have 4 different gyms there that I would travel between the 4 gyms and treat people there. And then it sort of started to evolve into having my own practice. So my background is my own office. I have a bunch of stuff here that I can set up, seeing people, seeing patients. And now majority of my clients I'm seeing them in my office as opposed to the gyms. I think COVID, post-pandemic, I stopped seeing people inside the gyms, and then they've just, from this point on, have been seeing people in my office. So.
All right, sounds good. So those are our 3 panelists, and I broke out, there's, like I mentioned, about 60, 70 questions. I broke them out into different topics, and whoever has their video on now will, I'm going to do a little show of hands to see which topics you are most interested in hearing about, kind of clumped into different components. So this may be a incentive. If you don't have your video on and you want to vote on it, go for it. But one is, you know, obviously the origin. We all want to hear like how, you know, Kevin, Julien, and James got involved in working in the climbing gym. I think that's, you know, there's no question that we want to see that process. But then the different questions from there broken into logistics, like how do you make it work? Mistakes or issues they had that maybe you can learn from if you're thinking about doing this. Marketing, how do you do it? How do you get more people? Finances, I'm going to pause the video. Tell us about the finances. How does that work? Tips, general tips, and then assessment and treatment. Any votes? Which one? Or do you want to hear all of them? Should we just touch on each one of them? Thumbs up, a little bit of each. All right, we're gonna hit. I see a bunch of thumbs up. All right, we're gonna hit a little bit of each of those. Maybe let's just start with the origin. I'm interested as well. Like, and maybe you could kind of each choose whoever wants to speak first. Like, each of you are physical therapists or physiotherapists. So how did you get involved in working in the climbing gym or working with the climbers? Like, what was that transition? Who wants to start on that? Kevin?
I'll jump in first here. I think this is kind of a fun story because it was never my intent to be like out of PT school where I was like, I'm going to work with climbers and I'm going to work in a climbing gym. I was a big advocate of just doing the best job I possibly could be as a PT, just in an outpatient orthopedic clinic. And then over the course of a few years of going through like insurance-based practices and just kind of getting through the grind of what a lot of PTs kind of go through is I just wanted to find a way to be a better PT somehow, like whether that's providing more time for a patient or really kind of honing in on like a specific injury or rehab or strength training plan. And so fast forward a couple of years of me just kind of thinking about these ideas for a while. I was kind of an avid climber at the time. And so I ended up doing a residency and a fellowship program. And in the fellowship program, I had to actually do a research study where I had the intention to treat, meaning I had to actually treat individuals with lateral epicondylitis. And I had to see 16 people for free twice a week for 6 weeks. And so it was pretty demanding to the extent where the current place I was working at wasn't willing to allocate extra time for me to see these individuals, especially if I was seeing them for the study for free. And so I ended up started seeing a lot of people to finish my fellowship program. I ended up seeing a lot of people out of my garage. And I just so happened to have like a small little wooden climbing wall. I had a portable table. And I just decided to start like, oh, you know what? Like I can probably get the dry needling stuff and some other just like general like fitness and equipment for just being a PT. And long story short, I just started having people come to my house. Obviously a lot of climbers have like elbow things that are going on. And so from word of mouth from friends and family, I was able to actually get a couple participants. And then fast forward a couple months later, I was done with the study and people still wanted to come see me at my house. And my wife wasn't really a big fan of that, just having strangers come to my house, like Google the Climb Clinic, and it was like my garage. And so what was really cool is the reason I'm just so excited to kind of be a part of this panel is I actually reached out to James really early on, where I was like, James, I see that you're a PT, you work in a climbing gym. Do you have any advice or any direction at which I should kind of pursue to maybe turn this into something more than just a research study? And James was thankfully more than willing to be a great colleague and share some pretty valuable information for me just to kind of get started. I'm sure we're going to share a lot of that stuff today at this panel, which is going to be great. But he really helped me get a lot of confidence of kind of just getting my ducks in a row as far as like maybe how to approach the gym, maybe how to approach an opportunity where I can make this a part-time job or a full-time job. I also reached out to Jared several times over the course of the last couple of years, whether that's him teaching a course or if I was able to catch him at a conference or something like that. And the other thing that seemed to really help me was I kind of just said yes to any and every opportunity that aligned with the climbing community, that aligned with being a better PT, that aligned with maybe some research and some other things. And so just that accumulation of all of those things, just things seemed to be going in the right direction for me. And I was able to kind of get to a point where I felt like I was established enough to say, hey, I want to do this part-time and then full-time. And then hopefully too, in the next couple months, I'll actually be growing here to a second facility, which will be pretty wild to think about here. But yeah, that's a long story short.
Awesome. James, what was your transition?
Okay, so I was also doing a fellowship program. Like Kevin, I'm really glad that you were able to share that, and I was curious to hear about your background as well. So thanks for sharing. And I was doing a fellowship program, and during that time, I had to do like part of it, complete the fellowship hours, and then I'll obviously make money at the same time. So part-time, I found like several different jobs where I could continue to make money, and then other part-time, I would travel to Kenosha back and forth to complete my hours. During that time, I was like thinking, man, I'm working so hard at these multiple like part-time gigs. I don't really feel appreciated. Like I'm just overworking myself. Why don't I spend that much energy into trying to start my own practice? And so at that time, my girlfriend, she was very gracious enough to help create my website, and she became my wife afterwards. And slowly, initially, I was starting to do home visits. But prior to that, I was also volunteering at a adaptive climbing group. It's a group where we help people with disabilities to climb. So as severe as paralysis, where we can just like lift them up off the ground, versus amputee, people that have amputees. And so a lot of people in the gym knew that I had my own practice, and I was fairly a strong climber too. And so I began to start to see a lot more climbing related issues through that. And then I went to a private practice conference in Chicago. I met someone there where I was starting to dabble into the idea of having my own office space. So that happened as well. And like I said earlier, where First Ascent gyms in the city, I was able to have a contract with them. And start to treat people inside their gyms. So I didn't have an actual like physical permanent space in the climbing gyms, but I would travel between the 4 gyms of First Ascent and treat people inside their yoga room space. And I would have a schedule, like this is when I'm going to be at this specific gym in the evenings. And so I did that for a couple of years. Then the pandemic hit and couldn't see anyone in those spaces. But thankfully I had my own office space and continued to see people here. And now, I guess we're still in the pandemic, but I've stopped seeing people in the climbing gyms, but I've developed enough rapport and enough connections. My posters are still in the gyms, so everybody knows that I specifically treat climbing specific injuries, and yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
All right, and Julien, your
Okay,
story.
so
How
it's
did
a
you get
little bit
involved?
different. So I'm a little bit older, so I started doing physical therapy when I was 30 years old. So I graduated at 30 years old. I'm 36 now. And I kind of held it all in my mind before. I'd been climbing for maybe 10 years already when I started doing that. And so I wanted to be a physical therapist for rock climbing even before I got admitted into physical therapy. So of course, all the work I had to do for sports trauma, everything was climbing oriented. I was already as a sport first responder covering some competitions for the national circuit. When I graduated, I remember my first day of work was the 27th of September in a clinic, but then 2 weeks after I started my own clinic. So I was just out of school. I just jumped right inside a climbing gym. So we had contacted me and another physical therapist, all the gyms in Montreal, to see if one gym would be able and willful to host a rock climbing physical therapy clinic. And so Horizon Rock accepted. And throughout all my studies, all my internships was like hand therapy, working with physical therapists that I know are working with not rock climbers necessarily specifically, but that are living in spaces across Quebec where there's actually a mountain, so they can see a few, because nobody had devoted themselves 100% to rock climber. So I graduated. I already had a good, let's say, contact, but I was a bad physio. I mean, I just graduated. I was fresh out of school. I sucked. And the first 2 weeks, I remember my first patients, I was clueless, but because I already had the lexicon, so I knew what an undercling, what a deadlift was, anything like, that's a crimpy pocket, that's a Gaston move, that's a layback. So I already knew so lot about that. We were speaking the same language, and it really made a connection with the patients. I've never put up an ad for my service ever, but I started very slow. I was seeing 1 patient a week, 2 patients a week, and I was working in a physical therapy clinic at the same time. I had choose wisely because in Quebec you have limitations. You are not allowed to have patients at a certain distance of the clinic where you're working it. So I found a clinic that was 25 kilometers away from the gym where I was working, so there would be no conflict of interest. When I got my first day and even my interview at the job at the physical therapy clinic, I said, my goal is to start as a freelancer and create my own clinic. And I don't only want mentorship, in manual therapy. I want mentorship in how can you manage your own clinic. So the people there were super nice. I mean, I was being pretty upfront. Yes, I want to work for you guys, but I'm going to leave eventually. And show me how I can leave you guys the earliest as possible. So they were actually glad when I left. Sometimes it's a bit bad because we're feeling like this hesitation. Should I leave the clinic? They were glad because that's the thing I was transparent about the first day, even before they hired me. They hired me and they knew I was going to leave. But I think they were not expecting me to leave that early. So I worked part-time with my project as a clinical for physical therapy, and I worked full-time at their clinic for 1.5 years. And I gave my last day 1.5 years afterward because I was picking up a big enough clientele. I was working between 65 and 75 hours a week. So it's 12, 16 hours per day plus Saturdays. And I really felt, okay, well, you know what? Both clinic is too much. I left my private, the clinic where I was working on to start just full-time on my own. And yeah, 1.5 years after graduating, I was alone in a rock climbing gym on my own doing full-time physical therapy. Only for climbers.
And
by the
Julien,
way, yeah.
give everyone an idea of your patient load.
Now I reduce. So I'm around 40, 45 patients a week. I spend 4 hours with each and every of them and preparing. So yeah, it's a bit easier now. I'm around 42 hours a week, but last year was around 57 hours a week. So you never stop. COVID, I took 2 years without taking any break. Because there was nowhere to go, nowhere to climb, nowhere to, there was no possibility to go to the Red River Gorge. So I climbed a lot, but I'm not going to do that anymore. I mean, like, obviously that was just insane. But I mean, I got my 10,000 hours so fast because I was just, grinding it as much as I could and being always present, available 6 days a week. Eventually you pick up the clientele because there's always a spot that's available for someone, and the rock climbing community is very knit. So just every single patient, give your best, word of mouth, no ad, and eventually it picks up.
All right, so let's get an idea of who here is a physical therapist or physiotherapist, just so we can target some of the questions. And then who here is a medical provider that's different than physical therapy, maybe occupational therapy, ATC, medical doctor, chiropractor, anything that I miss? Okay. And then who here has an interest in working with a rock gym? Like you actually, you yourself, you want to work with a climbing gym. Okay. So we probably need to gear some questions to how to make that happen. I think the first question that I have related to this is, how do you make it happen? Like if you were to, and maybe let's trim this into like a soundbite. Like if you were to say, hey, Kevin, Julien, James, if you were to say one thing, this is how I made it happen. 30 seconds or less, what would you do? Maybe let's start, James. How do you make it happen?
So I would speak to the owners and let them know that you have a service that's very specific to rock climbers, and how I did it in the First Ascent gyms is it was a split revenue. So certain percentage would go to me, certain percentage would go to the gym for them to I actually didn't have to pay them for like a rental space. So every patient that would come to see me, we had that split revenue. So try to be as involved as you can in your climbing gym community. And, it's all about building relationships. So.
All right, Julien, 30-second less soundbite. How do you make it happen?
Okay, you reach out all the rock gyms. So if one offers you something, you have another rock gym that offers you something. So you have a way to deal in between gym. Then approve your added value. So everybody's gonna get hurt climbing. People get crazy. They get hurt all the time. And your special agenda, your hidden agenda, is to keep people in the gym. So you sell that to the gym owner. Wow, all you guys, you're sitting super bad pockets. Everybody's gonna pop a finger there. I'm a physical therapist. I'm going to be in your gym. I'm going to keep the people climbing in your gym because they're going to rehab faster, so they can go back climbing faster, so they don't pause their membership all the time because they're always hurt. So you sell yourself. You find a place to be able to work inside the community. You need to climb there, and it's really the word of mouth. You're always there. They always see you. The people you see all the time are the ones you're going to relate to. So you're always climbing. You're always at the crag. You're always, expressing it, and you sell your added value to the gym.
All right, Kevin.
Yeah, I agree with both of those guys. And then the other thing I would say is just try to fill a void that brings a lot of value to the individual, to the climbing gym, and then the climbing community. Because if you could be a good physical therapist, you can know a lot about rock climbing, you know how to climb, you know how to address climbing injuries. But I think the thing that I've been able to build so much confidence in myself and in my practice is simply just being able to fill a void and provide value to that community. We're not trying to take away anything from it. We're trying to add to it. And I think being able to display that through, I think just being able to display that through how you treat people, to how you interact with people at the climbing gym, and exactly what they're just saying is I feel truly a part of the climbing community as well. So I feel like it comes off very authentic when I do want to treat kind of my other climbing buddies and make sure that they're able to climb just as hard as I am too. And so that's something that's always been more of a core value for myself, but it's also led me to a lot more growth in other areas in regards to like the business and that sort of thing as well too.
All right, so that makes sense. There's like these ways that you can get into the climbing gym, you know, whether you do a revenue share model, and we'll talk more about the finances later, or whether you do a flat payment, or, you know, whether you kind of get into the community. Let's say you get into the climbing gym. That's one part. That's one hard part, is get into the climbing gym, get the space, right? How do you get the climbers? How do you get the people? And so that would be the next thing is, you know, some of the people are listening are like, all right, check one. All right, I got the space. Now, how are you going to get the clients? Maybe another kind of soundbite is like, you personally, like, what did you do? Like, what was the thing that you look back on? You're like, this is how I started getting people.
Conferences. You prepare conferences, you get all the articles, all the data, and you give information. You host conferences for free. People can attend. You can do it online. You can do it at the gym. That was better in the gym before COVID. And you just display a lot of information. One of the turning point of my business was a conference I gave for architects. So I was getting a little bit of heat, and they say, "Hey, guy, do you want to go to the Battle Lounge in Montreal? There's a nice place with a, you know, for conference." And I teamed up with Felix, which is one of a guy in Quebec that created a, you know, strength building platform. So it's a smart board that allows you to know how much weight you're pulling. And we gave a shared conference, got around like 50, 60 people. And then that was really the takeoff.
Maybe James?
Yeah, so I did a lot of workshops in the climbing gyms, not just First Ascent, but the multiple gyms that are in Chicago. And so I would give finger injury prevention workshops, elbow, shoulder, neck injury prevention workshops with that. I was also, like I said before, involved with an adaptive climbing group. So I'm always in the gym on a weekly basis, and start to develop friendships with people that are in the gym. Like you have to definitely like constantly be climbing, because I think a lot of my clients that ended up was because just me being in the gym, like Julien was saying. And lastly, as much like Instagram, social media content, like let everybody know that you are the authority of like climbing related injuries. And like I've had people come to see me maybe 2-3 years into my practice, and like people are always, they're developing a relationship with you despite you knowing it or not, because they're watching you, they're going to your workshops, they're watching your Instagram posts. And so, you know, even if they're not injured and they have a friend that has a climbing injury, they'll remember in the back of their mind, oh, this guy like really knew what he was talking about. So
Kevin?
Yeah, I had kind of an interesting start in regards to, I was seeing a lot of individuals for free as part of the research study. And what was really nice about that is that really helped me get a lot of word of mouth of like, hey, this guy, you're going to see him in his garage, but he kind of knows what he's doing. He knows about climbing. And so that actually really helped me just grow like an in-person clientele. And then flash forward just a couple months later, I built that relationship with the climbing gym, and the climbing gym opened up kind of March 3rd, and then it had to shut down March 15th. And so my plan was kind of like, yeah, I actually want to do like a bunch of in-person events. I want to do some like educational things, be a part of that climbing community. But what was really challenging is that climbing gym and that climbing community just was kind of stalled for a while, because the gyms, at least in Denver, they were shut down for about 3.5 to 4 months. And so I obviously, like, this was my passion. This is the thing I really wanted to do. And so I wanted to find a way to be, how can I make myself more accessible and provide value to this community? And I told myself I would never do it. And I ended up started filming myself doing exercise videos, whether it was just using bands or coolers or just like climbing equipment. And I have nothing against it, but I had so many insecurities about myself just being in front of a camera, doing an exercise. And I finally just got to the point where I joke with people all the time saying, that I just kind of opened up a lemonade stand, and I just made sure that the lemonade was really good and that everyone was happy with it. And so even though I was maybe only seeing 1 or 2 people every other day, I made sure I did like the best I possibly could with each individual. And then I would actually start making them their own videos with specific exercises or techniques that were maybe a little bit more climbing related, or arguably just a little bit more accessible. So they only had a band at home or a cooler at home. And so I started making a lot of these videos for clients specifically. And then I just decided to start posting them on my Instagram. And what was really cool is a lot of people just had a lot of positive remarks about them. They're like, oh, I'm using this at home now too, since the gyms were closed. And so over the course of 3 or 4 months, I was actually able to build up quite a bit of, just being accessible and helping see people remotely as well. But when the gym actually opened up, I was seeing more people than I would have ever imagined if I just like started in the gym, just kind of waiting for people to come in, just because I was already providing, I think, for that. I was hopefully providing value for that community, but just being kind of what James was saying too, just being around and being kind of vulnerable to help more people. And was nice. I think it helped me be more approachable when I was in the climbing gym, or it's really easy just to message me on Instagram or send me an email. And so I feel like it was a blessing in disguise that all of that happened, because it kind of opened up an area I thought I would have never touched, which was like social media and that sort of thing. And yeah, so that was kind of my strange way of growing, was just word of mouth and in social media there.
So there's 2 more questions until we get into the logistics of the finances, which, that's a whole nother component. But first question I have for everyone, because this is a question that came up: who here has a professional social media page, something related to that? Who here has one of those? Okay. Question for all 3 of you. 1, how important is that? Do you need that to grow volume and grow practice? And maybe we'll start with that. Maybe in your own opinion, maybe in another 30 seconds or less, and I'll build from that. But maybe James, how important is social media presence for building a practice of seeing climbers? This is not having courses and education online products. This is building a practice to see individual clients.
Good question. My Instagram following is not that great. I think better person to ask is Kevin, since he's created such a big following. I'm really happy for him. But at the same time, I don't think it's as necessary. There may be differences in opinions, but the more you are in the gym and make your presence known, and you have to have good skills, good manual skills, just know what to do, learn how to treat climbing related injuries, and the word of mouth, it travels pretty fast. So I would say, there's a difference between being having a presence through social media and through the internet, and a lot of people grow that way, just having a bigger following. But I think the more important thing is to build relationships. So, and
then maybe Julien, go for it.
Amen to that. So I think building relationship is good. I think social media has good pluses and good minuses, so there's cons to it. So I'm really glad that I started without any social media appearance, and I try to keep it kind of low, just to when I'm climbing in the gym, I'm really comfortable about the fact that people don't know who I am. And it can get very, very harassing if that's the physio, and they're asking you questions and you're not able to climb anymore, and you just don't go to that gym, and then you get known. So I'm really trying to keep it as low as possible. So I think James is totally right with that. Build on a quality of relationship. Climbing is a tight-knit community. They'll eventually know about you, and you'll still have some privacy.
And then Kevin.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I said before, I think I was at the right place at the right time with the right material, which really allowed me to kind of grow from a social media standpoint. Because initially, a lot of my referrals was solely from Instagram, which was just kind of a wild concept. But the thing that I was also still doing, and it was very determined to make sure that never changed, was just providing that value for every individual person I saw. And I would argue now I've transitioned significantly away from social media, and almost all my referrals come from word of mouth or their previous clients or patients, which to me is kind of nice because to some extent, social media can be kind of stressful. And the only reason I really post these videos is I just want to be helpful. And this video was made for a particular patient or a client. And so I end up just posting it on social media as a way for just other people to have some more ways just to be accessible. I can't treat every single person that has ever had an injury. And sometimes that can be overwhelming, being a climbing gym and people coming up to you and asking about their injuries and that sort of thing. But I think it just brings up a valuable point that being accessible doesn't necessarily just mean being at the gym for 60 hours a day or being on social media 24 hours a day. I think for every individual, I think you can find a nice balance between developing your website and just kind of doing community events and doing some social media here and there. I think one of the coolest stories for me was I had about 7 followers on my Instagram page when I first started it. And one of the first people to ever message me was our head route setter at the gym I currently work. And so that one person that I treated already got the ball rolling for me to have like a nice introduction to the owner of the gym, where the route setter was like, oh, I actually saw this guy like last week. He's a climbing PT. And so just having that ability to have that accessibility for people to just swipe on social media and just kind of see who you are, what are you about. You don't have to sell yourself. Just post some of the things you value, whether that's like exercise-based treatment, whether that's just, I love climbing. I think just having somewhat of a presence, I think is helpful, but I certainly don't think you need a significant amount of time and energy that needs to be placed on social media when the end goal is just to be a really good PT and a valuable asset to the climbing community.
Yeah, and one interesting thing about social media, if you're doing or seeing patients in person, like that's your main thing, social media doesn't geocache. So you may have a better ability, meaning you don't know specifically that everyone you're spreading to is in that one area. If you're seeing patients remotely and you're practicing within your practice act, well, potentially that could be a larger net, right? That ability to kind of capture people outside your geographic region. But it sounds like word of mouth and referrals and kind of treating gym owners or route setters and kind of getting your name out there is a really successful way as well. There's lots of options. All right, this is just going to be to one person. So can one of you say the biggest mistake that you made related to being a climbing like gym physiotherapist, the biggest mistake that you made? And this is just for one of you. Who wants to jump in on that? Moving on to the next question.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of answer it, I suppose, is, I mean, I don't think thankfully I haven't had one big mistake that has like veered me in the wrong direction. But there's probably a lot of easier ways that I could have done things, which I'm sure we'll allude to as we continue to talk here. But one kind of silly, not a mistake that I made. I didn't take out like any business loans or anything like that. I kind of put a lot of things on a credit card, and it wasn't thankfully everything went well, but like I bought like a high-low table and some gym equipment and an ultrasound device. And I kind of just had the confidence of like, I'm going to do this thing. I need to commit to it. And so I don't necessarily recommend just putting it all on a credit card and doing that. But thankfully the clinic went well for me, so I was able to pay off the credit card sort of thing. But yeah, that's just like the only, like, thankfully my wife does all the financing stuff now in regards to the clinic. And so now I don't even have to worry about that stuff. But I kind of took a big plunge into, like I've been treating enough people on like a portable table that I keep breaking. I've treated enough people with like these bands that keep snapping and that sort of thing. So I was like, I really want to be a staple to this climbing community, and I want to prove to everyone that I'm official and I'm here to stay. And so I ended up seeing a lot of like adaptive athletes, kind of like what James was alluding to, and I wanted them to feel safe and comfortable in the space as well. So that's where I just dropped like a lot of money on a high-low table because I wanted them to not feel uncomfortable as I was trying to set up the table to a better height to allow me to do the treatment more effectively and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I think I have a lot of little stories like that, I suppose, but not necessarily a mistake, but there's definitely more effective ways of approaching that.
You probably got some good airline mile points from putting everything on the credit card.
100%, yes.
I have one mistake that
yeah, go for it.
Share because as therapists, there's a fine line between like we want to train people to get stronger and like perform better, as opposed to like we're trying to help people rehab themselves. And so one thing I do is I'll test finger strength. One time I was testing out this high schooler's finger strength, like testing on a crane scale, their 3-finger drag. And he got really excited about it. And he wanted to actually see if he can pull harder than his own weight. So he grabbed like a kettlebell that's like 40 pounds. And then as he was hanging on it, he ended up hearing like a little pop in his finger. So I was like, oh my gosh, that like in my mind, I was, what just happened there? And thankfully, in a week or two, like it felt like perfectly normal. But that was probably the biggest mistake. I'll never test finger strength beyond someone's own body weight. So.
All right, mine as well. Julien, what's your biggest mistake? And then we'll get into the finance stuff.
Actually, I was going to say the biggest mistake that I didn't do because I was a bit older getting into, but it's funny because there's no big mistake, but the one big mistake that's really easy to fall in is trash talking other PTs, osteopath, chiropractors, or the practitioner. People will come to see you. Oh, I saw that person. He was so bad. He injured me. I hurt more and everything. And it's so easy to want to jump in. Oh yeah, that's the bad physical therapist. I'm so better. And every single time, because I was older, I didn't fall into that trap. And you know what? These guys are referring me patients. So never shoot the other therapist. Everybody has their added value.
Yeah, that's so important. And it's kind of cool because when you see patients from other therapists, you actually get like some cheat notes because you can see into what the other therapist was doing. That kind of fast forwards to say, oh, all right, now we know that didn't work. Here's another option. All right, so we're going to dive into the finances, and I may be I'm pausing as we go, depending on how sensitive we get. But I'm going to start with kind of a light comment because someone wanted to figure out, first of all, this deal with free assessments. Like, how can you, and I'll kind of paraphrase what they wrote, but how important is doing a free assessment, or even better, how do you take the free assessment and make it into a paid client? How can you because it seems like a free assessment is an easy way to get people in the door. Any tips on getting a free assessment into someone that becomes a more long-term client? And I guess maybe speak to this if you do free assessments. If you don't do free assessments, then maybe not. But does anyone want to maybe speak to that? Maybe just one of you?
I'll say something just real quick because I feel like this is like a hot topic. I've had a lot of people who are like, I will never do a free consult, and then I have people who are like, yeah, I do free consults all the time. They work great. And the one thing I will say is I kind of know what my strengths are, and that's just kind of like my one-on-one interactions with each individual and really trying to be as specific to address their needs and their goals. And so the way I looked at free consults when I initially started was, this is my opportunity to kind of market myself and not necessarily sell myself, but just show them what value I could provide if they come to see me. And so I didn't look at it as, that was like 20, 30 minutes of my time where like I didn't make any money, or like, I don't know if they'll come back. But a lot of those free consults that I initially started seeing people for, they were the individuals that were giving me a lot of word of mouth. They were the ones that were reposting maybe videos that I posted on Instagram. They're the ones that were telling other climbing coaches or other PTs that they might have been seeing. And so I looked at it as a way of, I don't want to necessarily just go to doctors' offices or physicians' offices and try to sell myself to the physician in order to get a referral for a client or a climber or that sort of thing. I just kind of bet on myself, where I was like, you know what, I think I'm the best advocate for myself in regards to providing value to the climbing community and being a PT. And so that's just the philosophy, or at least the way I look at free consults, where I end up getting almost more value out of it, just simply because A, they come back sometimes to be a patient, B, they start telling their friends and family that, hey, there's this guy in this climbing gym, he knows what he's talking about, I'm seeing him now, you should go see him too. And so I think it's an opportunity to really open up some doors. And the key thing is if you have the time to do it as well, because if you're only seeing one person every other day, that might be a great opportunity to say, hey, maybe not see a free consult every 30 minutes for 9 hours a day, but I think start opening up those doors and start exposing yourself to maybe some of these climbing injuries you didn't realize were happening. So you can start to even learn what this community actually needs in order to get better. And I think that built a lot of confidence in myself to say, hey, I have a lot of people coming to me with this particular injury or this type of movement or goal. And it really helped shape the way my practice is today by just being accessible in that regard.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording now because we're going to jump into some financial discussions for people. So final take-home message for opening a practice in a climbing gym.
I'll go. I feel like I've been saying a lot of the same things over and over again, but I truly value the opportunity I get to work with climbers and be a part of the climbing community. And the biggest thing is I just feel like I'm finally in a position where I feel comfortable, where I could provide a service for this community I care about so much. And I think knowing that that's kind of my like the core reason of why I'm doing this, I truly believe is why I've had the success that I've had in such in this like 2-year span. And it just gives me so much more confidence knowing that as long as I kind of continue relying on these values of just being a really good PT, and by what I mean by being a really good PT is just doing my due diligence in regards to knowing what the research is, kind of honing in my skills, working with other colleagues like yourself to how can we collectively make the climbing community healthier and stronger. That's been really helpful because it's also a lot of work. It took a lot of painstaking hours to kind of get things up and running, to kind of deal with your like doubts and insecurities as far as getting things rolling. But the one thing that kind of never wavered was the fact that I truly enjoy working with this community. I don't see myself ever just kind of half-assing an opportunity to help someone and work with this community as well too. And so when you don't have to worry about that stuff, meaning like you really care about what you do, you really enjoy what you're doing, and you can see yourself doing this for a long time, then it really pays for itself. Because like I said before, I feel like it's a blur between what I really enjoy and what's actually a job. And for some people that's great. And for some people, they really want to have that separation. But it's nice that I feel like I can truly invest in this community and really appreciate what I'm able to kind of do for my friends, my family, and anyone who's willing to help and come see me.
Let's see, who wants to go next? James, Julien, go.
Oh, Kevin, amazing comments, Kevin. I totally agree with that. I would list the last word to something I learned when I was working in the other clinic, because I was asking for mentorship on how to build a clinic. And first I was struggling because I was only offering time availability on Tuesday evening. And I was like, oh, how come does my Tuesday evening doesn't fill up? And one of the physical therapists was there that actually was one of the owner of the clinic, said, you need to be available every possible amount of time. So a Tuesday evening, a Thursday evening, a Monday morning, a Wednesday morning. The more you're available, the more you're gonna you get a clientele. Otherwise, the only people that come to see you is people that have their Tuesday evening off. Whereas if you open a lot of, and that's why I open Saturday mornings, then you reach people, and sometimes your Saturday morning person will be able to see you on a Tuesday evening. But as I started to opening up a lot more hours, even if some of them were empty, then it started growing. But by only offering between 4 and 7 on a Tuesday evening, it's never going to grow. And that changed my whole perspective. And that actually helped me to grow the clinic.
And James?
I'd say, you definitely have something to offer the climbing community that is very unique. and many times I tend to question like why I'm doing this, but the information that you've learned, the schooling that you went through, like you guys know so much more about the body and the movements, like what causes it to be overstressed, what causes it to perform better. And so I think you guys really have a really good value, very good value to add to the climbing gyms. Be confident and don't undersell yourself. I think a lot of times myself, I've done that as well, but I've gotten to the point where like my price points are this high and I'm confident enough to say I deserve this, and so you guys definitely deserve it. That might be some ideas for you guys to play around with as well, but yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for all three panelists. Round of applause for kind of sharing, everything that through climbing gyms and being a PT and physio and that whole process. I'm sure most of you here are part of the Rock Rehab Community or climbing special interest group, but I'll just drop the links in the chat if you're not and you're interested. It's free groups. This is where we have sessions like this. And if you're a physiotherapist, physio, occupational therapist, hopefully I don't miss anybody, medical doctor, chiropractor, etc. It's open to everybody. So the whole idea is if everybody can get involved. So thank you for everybody for being a part of this. Thank you definitely Kevin, Julien, and James. And thank you all for coming out. That is everything that we have kind of scheduled and planned for today.